Hello and welcome back to Trinity's Treats. I know it's been a while since I did my last tutorial, but today I'm going to show you all how to do decorated sugar cookies. So these are the two cookies we're going to learn how to do today. It's a little flower and of course my favorite, a little cupcake. So this is just a basic sugar cookie. It's a rollout sugar cookie. You want to make sure that you have a sugar cookie recipe that doesn't whenever you cook it, you don't want it to kind of like, move a lot. You want it to be able to hold its shape. And then we're using royal icing for this, so that's another thing to keep in mind as well. All right, now let's get started. So we're gonna go ahead and flood our cookie. Okay, and what I'm using royal icing, and this royal icing, the consistency of it is a little thin because I want it to be able to run and fill in the gaps. Okay, so first I'm going to do an outline. I always start with a good outline. If you notice, I don't have a tip in my bag at this point. It's not really necessary until you start doing like your final detailing and your lining and stuff like that. So I hardly ever use a tip at this point. If it runs over a little bit like that, it's okay. It's your base coat. So just kind of fill in that line again. And then we're going to go back through and just start filling it in. Now, it's not necessary to fill in every little space. As a matter of fact, you don't want to fill in every space because it can cause it to get a little too full and start flowing off the side of your cookie. So just kind of put the icing on there and you're going to move it around with the tip of your bag. Okay. And if you happen to get any little air pockets in there, you want to go ahead and pop those in advance, because if you let them dry, what they'll do is they'll keep expanding, and then it could possibly you could possibly end up with a hole in your icing by the time it dries, and you don't want that. You want a nice, pretty surface. Okay, so we're just going to keep doing this. The royal icing that I'm using a royal icing using meringue powder. You can make your own from scratch, but it's a little more tedious, and it's like, why waste all of those fabulous eggs when you don't have to? Okay, so this is the first cookie. So we're going to set this to the side, and then we're going to start on our cupcake. Okay, so for the cupcake, I don't know if you noticed on the video, but we're going to do kind of two different, I'm going to show you a little different method here. This is called the wet on wet technique. How the dots here, they're flush with the icing. They're not raised, and you have to do that while your base coat is still wet. So I'm going to show you how to do that. You're going to start with your line. Okay, and then you're going to come in here and just kind of leave a little bit of room for where your white icing is going to go in, and then you're just going to start filling it in. The amount of pressure that you use on your cookie depends on how thin your icing is, so you just kind of gauge it and go from there. So I'm moving kind of fast, but if you have any questions, you can always get at me in the comments. Or you can go to my website. It's www.trinitystreats.com, and you can contact me on there with any questions that you may have. Okay, have another little air pocket here. I want to go ahead and pop those now, and they'll kind of flow back into place. So while the base coat is still wet, I'm going to come back in with another color. I'm using white. It doesn't have to be white. That's just the color that I'm using for the video. And it's the same consistency as my base coat, and you just want to come in and drop it on your base coat. Okay, and what it's going to do is it's going to just flow down into that base coat, and you'll have one level surface to work with. If you want it to be a raised surface, you just wait until your base coat dries and then come back in and add your dots. Okay, so I'm just going to come back in, do the outlining again. And you'll notice that where the white and pink meets, it's going to kind of, the colors will kind of run together just a little bit, but don't worry about that because we're going to cover that up when we come back and do our lining and detailing and stuff like that. So just going to fill it in, push it around, So you can add as little as much as you need to. You just kind of, you know, gauge it on your own. There's no real way to do it. You just kind of gauge it however, whatever works best for you. Okay, so now we're going to go back, set this to the side. We're going to go back to our flour cookie. And to finish this one off is very simple. I'm using using royal icing again. The royal icing I'm using for my outline is a little bit thicker. It's a little bit stiffer consistency than what I use to flood my cookies, only because, you know, it needs to be more stiff. Now, one thing with working with royal icing, you always want to keep your tips of your bags inside of a wet paper towel or like a wet towel, because what will happen, royal icing dries hard. So it'll start to crust around your tip and it'll make it hard for the icing to come out. I usually do that, but I forgot to do that for this video. So, one thing I want to show you before we do our lines, okay? Most people tend to, when they're doing their lines with their tips, they want to put the tip on the surface and then try to draw a line. Don't do that, because you end up with all of this and the line is very inconsistent. It can, if your hand is shaky, it'll show in your line. You want to just anchor it and drop it. Anchor it, let it flow, and drop it. Okay? So let's get started on our outline here. So I'm going to start from the center. And I'm going to come around, just applying a little bit of pressure. And just going around making loops. And remember, I don't have my tip on the surface. It's actually floating above the surface whenever I'm going around. Helps it out a lot. Okay? And then to make a centerpiece for it, what I did is I took a little fondant and I rolled it out. I rolled out the green and then used a flour cookie cutter, and then I used the pink and made a smaller, with a smaller cookie cutter. And I'm just going to place it in the center like that. And the little silver piece in the middle, it's all edible. So you just place it like that and let it dry. Typically you can let this dry for about 3 to 4 hours and it's dry to the touch. But if you really need it dry quick, put it under a fan and you'll be just fine. Okay, so coming back to our cupcake, we're going to go ahead and start our do our swirls on top. Okay, I got a little tip. My tip is clogged. This is why you should always use a wet towel or use a wet paper towel whenever you're using royal icing. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of start here, and I'm going to make a little swirl and make sure that my swirl kind of comes back, and we're going to cover up where the two colors meet. Okay? Okay, and then we're going to do that again. Alright, and then you just start swirling however you want to, okay? You just make little curly cues, and wherever they meet, that's where they meet. Okay. Okay, so you can do that. What I did with this cookie is you can leave it plain like this, or you can add sprinkles. Okay. I just use the little sprinkles, or you can use the sugar crystals. And while it's wet, so you want to do this portion first before you do the bottom part, before you do the outline part, because the sprinkles are going to stick to whatever's wet. So you want to make sure that if you're going to add sprinkles, add it to this portion before you do your outlining on your cupcake liner. Alright, then we're going to simply come in here. Remember I said to anchor it and let it fly. Alright, and then anchor it again. And put some little lines in here. And since I'm putting this on there when after the base coat has dried, it will sit, it will kind of sit like a raised a little bit above the base coat. So, and then to top it with this one, I just rolled up a piece of fondant in a ball and then kind of flattened it a little bit, and you can put it on there like a little cherry on top. Or you can leave it plain, however you want to do it. Okay, So thank you for joining us today, and be on the lookout for more tutorials. We're on our way to Albuquerque, New Mexico. So we're really excited about opening up in that area and offering you all very fantastic cakes, delicious cakes, custom cakes for the Albuquerque, New Mexico area. So see you soon. Bye.